Heidi-ho there, and welcome to another edition of the amazingly popular Mr. Boob Tube Instructional Safety videos. I'm Mr. Boob, and I'm here to preach the gospel of safety. And today's episode is one of my favorites, the proper use of automobile jumper cables. The problem with today's car batteries is you never know when you're just one engine crank away from having a dead battery. So, like a Boy Scout, you always have to be prepared, and having a good set of jumper cables in your trunk is a great way to get back on the road fast. But you have to know the proper way to use them, and that's where this video will come in handy. But first, a little background information about jumper cables, especially if you're considering buying a set, which you should if you don't already own a pair. The cost of jumper cables ranges between $10 and $50. And the main difference is due to two factors: the length of the cable and the thickness of the cable, which is also known as the gauge. Now, jumper cables come in various lengths between 10 and 20 feet. The longer cables usually are more handy because you never know where your car's going to die, and you have to be able to put another car right in front of it. So, get a longer cable, in my opinion. Some people think that the longer the cable, the less juice there is going to be going to the dead battery. These people are idiots. All you have to do is get a long set of jumper cables with a thick gauge of wire. The standard gauge of wire for jumper cables is 6 gauge, but some of the cheaper ones only come in 8 gauge wire. Now, oddly enough, the bigger the number of gauge of wire, the smaller diameter it is. Weird, huh? These bad boys happen to be 20 feet long with a 4 gauge wire. Perfect. Oh, and here's another tip before we get to the meat of the video. One way to extend the life of your battery is to make sure that the terminal posts are clean. Because what happens over time is that the hydrogen gas from the acid in the battery escapes and mixes in the atmosphere with other air under the hood, and it creates this green gunk that you see on the terminal posts here. Now, the best way I've found to keep top post batteries clean is to use one of these handy dandy gadgets you can get at your local auto parts store. But before you clean battery terminals, always remember to wear safety glasses. Take it from someone who's had to go to the ER to get his eyeballs flushed out with battery gunk before. No brag, just fact. Now, in order to use this little cleaner, which has little wire brushes inside you can see here, you simply put it on top of the battery post and twist. Medic! So, now we're ready to connect our jumper cables. Both engines should be off, and the transmission should be put into either park or neutral if you have a manual tranny. So, what we want to do is connect the positive post from the dead battery to the positive post of the good battery, and the same with the negative posts. So, first you have to identify which is the positive and which is the negative. Now, most batteries will either have something like a plus sign on the positive terminal or a negative sign on the negative terminal. Now, if they don't have these signs on the battery, you can usually tell the positive because it has a red hood on it, and the negative always is a black hood. One other thing about car battery posts: they come in 2 styles, top post and side post. This is an example of a battery with top post, and over here is a battery with side terminal posts. Now, the side posts are a little harder to connect your jumper cables to because they're smaller, but it can be done. Just make sure that the connection is still intact when you go to jump the battery. So finally, I'm about to show you the proper way to connect your jumper cables in 4 easy steps. First thing you do is you take the colored end of one of your jumper cables, sometimes the red, in this case it's orange, and we're going to connect it to the positive terminal of the dead battery, like so. Now you might want to wiggle it around to get through some of that green gunk. Make sure you have a good solid connection. Step 2. You take the same color on the other end of the jumper cable and you connect it to the positive post on the good battery. Like this. Remember I told you those side posts were sometimes hard to make a connection? Step 3. You take the black end from the same end of the jumper cable and you connect it to the negative post of the good battery. We get good connections there. Okay. The final step, instead of putting this black clamp of the jumper cable on the negative post of the dead battery, what you do is you put it on something metallic on the engine block. This will ensure a good safe jump. So at this point you may be asking yourself, why is the proper order of connecting the jumper cables important? Well, let's just say you got lazy and just decided to make the 2 connections on the good battery, and then you were going to walk over and make the 2 connections on the bad battery. So you're walking over and jumping Jehoshaphat. So now that you have your jumper cables properly connected, this is what you do. You start the car that has the good battery first. Let it run for a little while. Then you try to start the car with the dead battery. What you might have to do is rev the engine of the car with the good battery in order to have it send more juice down the line to the dead battery. Once the car with the dead battery has been successfully started, all you have to do is remove the jumper cables in the reverse order in which you connected them. And that's all there is to it. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Now let's just say it might be a little difficult for you to remember the proper order of connections to make for your jumper cables. If that's so, you can get one of these little contraptions. They're pretty cool. What you do is you connect the one end of jumper cables to the good battery, and you connect the other end of jumper cables to the bad battery, and then you connect the jumper cables in the middle like this. Pretty neat, huh? I actually got these bad boys as a safety promotion from my employer one year. Hint, hint. Well, that's about it. I hope you learned something about the proper use of automobile jumper cables. From all of us here at the Mr. Boob Tube Safety Instructional Videos, be seeing you.